to be in pictures. You're wonderful to see. You
Feeling
ought
a
to
little
be
under the
in
weather today, but I
pictures.
pushed
Oh,
through.
what a hit
But wow, what an
you would
exciting
be.
Oscars. It was just ended just a couple minutes ago. What are your initial thoughts?
Okay, well, very happy for Anora. It's my favorite film of
Yeah.
2024, and so it would be great to see it come away with five Oscars. It overperformed. I underestimated how much the love would be. I think as soon as you saw it win, like editing particularly, I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, it's going to go all the way now. And I was immediately then sort of worried about my prediction of Demi Moore going all the way and, capitalizing on that old school Hollywood love. And I thought, you know what, Mikey Madsen's got a real chance here now. But I had locked in my predictions. And as it came to be, yeah, I am really happy to be wrong in this case.
Yeah.
When you see a film like that, it really shows that Hollywood is embracing indie filmmaking. When a film like Anora can clean up essentially. So even though I didn't get everything right, and it was Anora that I underestimated, I'm very happy to be wrong.
Yeah, and you still got it for Best Picture.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I didn't do well in the final innings here because and this really demonstrates to me the changing landscape of the voting electorate demographic at the
definitely.
Academy. Because I'm still thinking in the old model, and in my mind, there's just too much skin in Honora. It's too different for like the old school. This they're going to want something a little in the middle of the fairway. So I went with Conclave, my favorite film of the year. I played that strategy where I thought, okay, the way with the preferential balloting, it'll be a number of people's second or third favorite, if not their first. That's the way I played it. That was my strategy, and it did not win. The changing demographics of, I think, the voting block were demonstrated tonight. A small independent film that kind of broke boundaries in a number of areas. I'm glad that you loved that film a lot. I
Yeah.
liked it, and in the end, though, it's well deserved.
I think what it will probably show, I'd love to see the numbers of all of this, and I think it was incredibly tight between a number of different films. I mean, Conclave certainly came in with a lot of support, and just because it didn't win in a number of categories doesn't mean people didn't like it. And I think clearly, I mean, The Brutalist fared as well as I think we thought it was going to do. It picked up three: Best Actor, Best Score, and Best Cinematography, all of which I guessed correctly. But I don't think Brady Corbet was far behind Sean Baker in Best Director, and I'd be curious to see how it fared in Best Picture to have a look at that preferential ballot rankings because, I think it did it was one of the most unpredictable Oscars in recent memory, and I think that is a good thing. Not only for the viewer to just sort of
Mhm.
add a little drama, but it shows that there is a diversity of opinion and a lot of really good quality movies this year. I've
Mhm.
seen some people who have sort of said, "Oh, well, there because there's no big winner, because the big
Right.
front runner, it means there aren't any good movies." I think it means quite the opposite. I think it means that there
I
are a
think
number.
absolutely. When we saw the Brutalist take cinematography and original score, and then Brody
Mm.
goes on to take best lead actor, I thought, oh, this could maybe Brady Corbet. Obviously we were seeing some love for Nora too, so I think you're absolutely right. I bet you if we saw the numbers where the voting went, it was probably pretty tight.
Yeah. What did you think about just the show in general?
My first initial thought was I really applauded that they're trying to bring the artisans behind the camera to the forefront. You saw there was a lot of love for costume design and editors and makeup artists and special effects artists. Bringing up these different and a lot of times I think it's difficult. They've tried to highlight them in the past, but let's be honest, we want to see the stars. We're not interested in the makeup person.
Right.
And I thought they did a nice way bringing out the stars with the people that represent these different areas. So at least we can start to appreciate because you could see the artists, those stars, really appreciate them. They know them. They sit in those makeup chairs for hours with these folks. They're the ones that are getting stitched up in all this fancy costume for hours. And so there's a real relationship that you see that the artists have with these behind the camera artisans that we don't share as the viewer. And I thought they did a pretty good job at least trying to bridge that gap a little bit.
Yeah, I think with the Oscars, they're also always facing this kind of struggle for legitimacy. On the one hand, the whole point of the show, and I think the appeal of the show, is to see the big stars and the biggest names
Mhm.
on the red carpet in a moment of humility and humanity, if you like, outside of a role. But as a result of that, they're always having to deal with criticism that it's just, rich A-listers slapping each other on the back and
Right.
congratulate each other and giving them trinkets. So I think that this is the right way of doing it, is to sort of say, it does take a village. And I think that that feeds into the other big narrative that we've seen this year. It's not the first time we've seen it, it was definitely very prominent that it's all about the theatrical experience,
Mhm.
and then a movie is a what's the word I'm looking for? It's an occasion, it's an event,
Mhm.
it's something that you should
Yeah.
leave the house to go and experience, and it
Which is
is
what
it is a
Sean
big
Baker
thing.
was bringing up.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been a great sort of pioneer for this. He is. He kept reiterating the fact that it's a wholly independent film and it wouldn't exist without the theatrical experience. He's been an incredible innovator. One of his earlier films, Tangerine, was famously all shot on iPhones. So he is out there fighting the good fight, as it were, and to see the
Mhm.
industry an honest and organic and legitimate way embrace an indie film. It doesn't feel like tokenism. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel like them saying, "Okay, we're going to throw you a bone. See, look, we're not just all about big studio movies like Wicked and Dune." This felt organic, legitimate. It felt deserved, more importantly, and so in that regard, I think it's a really encouraging step.
I've got to ask you your take, being the big Bond lover that you are, and with the recent sell of the Bond franchise to
Mm.
Amazon, which I know you're not a big fan of. I almost felt like the Bond uh, moment that they did during the show was almost like an in memoriam. Like the
Yeah.
Bond that we knew before is gone, and we're going to be seeing a new era, which might not be appreciated. I was wondering what the thinking was behind that, because this was not a year where a Bond film came out. So to give that kind of slice of time in an already time sensitive format or show, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought it was a complete waste of time, frankly. As you rightly say, I'm the biggest Bond fan I know, and it's and they've recognized the Bond franchise many, many times before. I mean, films have won in recent years for their songs, and I think it was just a couple of years ago. It was the 60th anniversary, and they did a big thing there. Whenever they do a little hat tip to stunts or anything like that, they're there. Daniel Craig and others. Previous Bonds have always been there at the Oscars. The reason why they did it this year is because Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli received Oscars at the Governors Awards earlier this
Oh,
year,
okay.
and they were in the audience, and it tied in very nicely with the news, with the horrible news that they were stepping away from and had ceded creative control to the Bond franchise. But what exactly the point of that montage was is anybody's guess. I don't get it. I don't understand it. And you're right. The only thing that made sense is it did feel like 007 RIP. It felt like an in memoriam
Yeah.
segment. It's like Bond as we know it is dead. And that's a weird thing to be celebrating, especially at the Oscars and especially at a time when when time is limited as well. It was interesting because I was watching the UK feed and they made an interesting point. They knew that there was a Bond moment coming up, and they weren't going to reveal. They didn't want to talk about it because they were like, well, we've heard some things, but you'll see. And then the bit came, and it came back to them, and they were like, oh yeah, that's the bit we had heard. We had heard there was going to be a Bond bit, but we guessed that they were going to announce who the new James Bond is, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, and they would have never done it that way. But it's a new era, who knows? And so that was their thinking, and that, in all fairness, would have been a fairly legitimate reason for them doing the whole Bond thing. Anyway, but
Hmm.
I don't think they're there yet, and I've been reading in the trades what with the deal that's going through, whatever. Nothing can actually move forward until the deal between Amazon and Eon Productions has gone through, and that's going to be some time. Sorry to completely derail our Oscars reaction video with the whole Bond thing. So they can't cast a new Bond, even if they've got someone lined up for some time yet. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I got Brody's speech went a little too long. That was kind of funny watching him basically shoo away the
Mm.
orchestra when they struck up and like, hey, I've done this before.
I
But
like
even
that
my
bit of
son,
shade. I like that bit of shade when he was like, "Hey, I've done this before. I know what I'm doing." I like
yeah,
that.
that's right. I would have liked if he did something with a little more teeth in it. It's kind of the generic, we should all learn to love one another, blah, 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 which I'm
Mm.
all for, but sometimes I want it a little more specific. Tell us, I felt that the Academy was specifically not touching the Zelensky Trump thing. They didn't want to be, and probably rightfully so, because with the polarization of the situation right now, the last thing they want is to fuel fire on the fuel on the fire of, oh, just the liberals are behind, Ukraine, Zelensky. And that's why I thought they had a very precise, well-timed sniper shot by Conan O'Brien.
Yeah. I thought that was a great gag, and he's not known for being a political comedian. And
No.
I thought that, going into this, we were like, okay, well, he's going to get back to kind of like his silliness of his late night shows, and he
Hmm.
did. It opened really long, but I thought generally really strong. It was
Yeah.
half an hour before the first commercial break, and only one award had been given out in half an hour. So I thought that was all that was all pretty good, and beyond the song going I'm not going to waste your time or whatever, which I think was a waste of time. Other than that, I thought he gave a really kind of strong opening. It was funny. I quite liked the Wicked medley that opened it.
That was
I'd heard that.
fantastic. I
Yeah,
was
I
going to
thought.
mention that. I thought it was strong. It was a great, strong start.
Yeah. So beyond all that, I thought the show itself was fine. I wonder if people have been told to sort of leave. I to sort of leave politics till later, but I don't know. I don't think you can really control what people are going to talk about. If people have something to say, they're going to say it. And I thought that by and large the playing of people off was handled quite gracefully, because there was a previous, was it animated short film, where you had the couple who came up and they got halfway through their speech and then they got their phone out and then they were trying to read it
Yeah.
off their phone and all that. And I was like, by the time they've got their speech in front of them, they're going to get cut off. And then they didn't. They were given the time to actually sort of say it. And I think that that's the right way to do it. There is no reason to sweep people off stage. It's like, give them their moment. This is what tonight's all been building up to.
Yeah.
Just, what's another 15 seconds? Cut one of those montages or musical numbers if you need to, because at the end of the day, I don't think really anyone gives a crap about those, whether they're in there or not. Occasionally they can work well, but I don't think anyone would miss them.
James, I think you and I are getting ready to do some reviews of some classic Gene Hackman movies because we
Yeah.
lost the late great Gene Hackman this week, and I thought the moment that they had with Morgan Freeman was particularly well done. I mean, to have Morgan Freeman come out with all of his gravitas and give a genuine talk about like not just the great actor, but his friend. It was one of the moments that worked tonight.
I think that that's when it hits hardest, but when you've got somebody like that, huge member of the industry, of the community, who's been around forever, he's worked with so many people. And so, yeah, Morgan Freeman will be speaking for many, many people when they stand up and say, yeah, he wasn't just an actor I admired. He was a colleague and a friend, and I will miss him. And I
No,
think that
because
that
I was
always
going to say
lands.
yeah, with all those Memoriam, the montage, there was some legendary actors in there. There was
It's been
Maggie
a
Smith, and there's
been a
Donald
tough year.
Sutherland. I mean, and it made me think, and of course, it has a little to do with the fact that Gene Hackman just passed away this week, which I'm sure kind of heightens the moment. But I think there's also a feeling that Gene Hackman, there's A-listers, and then there's A-listers plus. Those that have just been with us so long, have worked, like you said, with so many people, have worked across so many genres. It's just so ingratiated into that community that you give an extra moment just to acknowledge what they meant and what their loss will mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you always have to sort of deal with the same kind of response to these things. Whenever you get an immemorial section, the way that people, certainly on social media, always respond is, "Oh, you missed out this person." But then I
Yeah,
think that is something that's sort of inherent of publishing any kind of list about anything ever, is that people
certainly.
will always zero in immediately on what's not on your list and who you did miss out. I saw some people mention that Tony Todd, the star of Candyman, who died late last year, had been missed on. It's like, I would hate to have had the job of putting that list together. You know,
Hmm.
it's you're not going. You've been probably given 1 minute, and you do not have time to include
Yeah.
everybody. So there are going to have to be. I imagine there was a long list of probably about 200 names, and you've got to cut it down to probably about 30. So obviously you're going to cut people off. It doesn't mean you forgot necessarily, and it doesn't mean you're doing your job badly. It just means there isn't time. And I just hate the fact that that's always the narrative after In Memoriam. It's like, oh, you missed off so you missed off. It's like, I'm pretty sure almost every time they didn't miss them off.
Yeah.
They just had to make some serious cuts. Anyway, let's get on to the book. I mean, were there any big surprises for you?
No, I mean, this is a pretty uneventful evening. I mean, surprise in the fact was it going to be a Nora or was it going to be, Conclave but I don't think we were surprised. There was no shocks tonight where it's like you felt like, whoa, we didn't see that coming. It was definitely within it's either this or it's this
Yes.
categories by and large. So, nobody got slapped. There was no huge surprises. There was no over the top drama. It was the middle of the fairway. I thought they did a very good job. It was a good Oscars, but mostly uneventful.
Yeah, it was slick. It was polished. I think it flowed pretty well. I'm quite happy with the winners. I don't think anybody won that I'm actually sort of upset that they won. Even when I didn't get it wrong. When I got it wrong,
Hmm.
in almost every case, it was that Enora won instead of what I thought was going to win, and so that's absolutely fine by me because I love Enora. I think the only other really big one that I got wrong was Flow winning for Best Animated Feature Film over The Wild Robot, and I'm kind of kicking myself about that one because Flow was winning all of the precursor awards, and I just
Yeah,
thought, oh no, it's a bit too indie. They seem to like The Wild Robot because it got 3 nominations, and so I thought, oh, they're going to want to do that, but they didn't.
they
Um,
didn't.
but that's fine. I mean,
Hindsight's
Flow.
2020. Hindsight's
Yeah,
2020.
exactly. Flow is a perfectly fine winner, and the only other place I dropped predictions were in the short categories because I said up front I haven't seen any of them, and so I was quite
Hmm.
pleased to have predicted one of them just purely on guesswork. So yeah, I mean, it was good to see No Other Land win. Those filmmakers gave a political speech, and that's absolutely understandable. The movie is about the Palestinian conflict, and it is made by an Israeli and a Palestinian together, and so that's what it's all about: building bridges,
Hmm.
getting rid of all of these sort of differences. But beyond that, yeah, I felt that by and large the speeches were fine and gracious and nothing crazy, nothing untoward, and yeah, pretty happy with the results.
It ended with Harry and Sally giving Best Picture, and that was a moment to see Billy Crystal shine. He's still my favorite Oscars host, despite the fact I thought Conan did a good job tonight. But yeah, I think that we're at the risk of repeating ourselves. So, anything else you have to say, James?
Honestly, not really. Very happy for Honora, very happy for The Brutalist and The Substance. They all came away with something, which is great. You know, they're my top 3 films of the year. So by and large, yeah, good
Yeah,
job.
Zoe Saldana, Kieran Culkin. We called those early. Those were
Absolutely.
pretty much a given. So, anyhow, that wraps up this year's Oscars 2025. This is a yearly thing James and I've been doing. It's been exciting to be able to do it again with you, James. We look forward to next year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hit us up on Blue Sky Instagram or in the comments section below if you have an opinion that you'd like to share or disagree with any of ours.
I've got an opinion. I think you and I should be the local hosts on the local feed here in Hong Kong because I think we could do a much better job.
God bless those folks every year. Doesn't matter who they get, they're terrible. I don't blame them. There's too many cooks behind the cameras. But
I'm sure.
ouch.
Anyhow, till next episode, everybody.
You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be.